So, welcome. Thank you for coming here. What we're going to talk about today, what I'm going to try to explain, is to solve the eternal irrigation question that everybody has to deal with, and most of us don't deal with it very well. Most of the time, we end up kind of educated guess. The irrigation equation, it's really just a simple equation. Water used, water to be applied to replace the water used. So how much water has my landscape plants used since my last irrigation? And how long do I run my sprinklers to replace that water? So we kind of need to know that to be able to irrigate efficiently. Are you all CVWD customers? Okay, so we have tiered rates here. So we don't want to waste water because it will cost us money. We want to stay within our budget. So we need to answer this question with a little more precision. And that's what CIMIS is all about. Once a landscape receives water, whether it's raining or whether we irrigated, how long is it going to last? How long before I irrigate again? Right? So at that clock, when do I decide it's time to irrigate again? Right? So we have a basic equation with three variables that hardly anyone's heard about. So basically, ETL equals ETO times PF. So what are these letters? What are these acronyms? What do they mean? Why do I care what order they're in? What do they have to do with irrigation? How can they help me save water? And what do they have to do with my own personal irrigation system? Things. What happens to your water after you apply it to your landscapes? Landscapes lose water like a swimming pool does. It's easier to see water loss on a swimming pool because the level goes down. And so I have a swimming pool in my backyard, and I take a look at it, and I see it going down to a certain place on the tile, and I go in and refill it back up to the normal level. Landscapes are basically the same thing. They lose water. However, we can't see it like we can on the swimming pool. We can only infer that this is happening. And while the swimming pool is passive, it just gives up the water. Your landscape is proactive. Your landscape can regulate, in some sense, how much water is being used. We call this evapotranspiration. So what evapotranspiration is, evaporation from the wet plants, the wet leaf surface, the wet soil, and transpiration is actual plant water use. We all perspire, plants transpire. The same thing. They give off water, they lose water. So evapotranspiration are the two sources from which your water leaves your landscape. So there's three things to keep in mind here. First of all, the atmosphere that's surrounding the planet has an almost insatiable appetite for water. Insatiable being it's never satisfied. Always wants more water. And nowhere is this more apparent than here in the desert. So the ultimate destination of all irrigation water is to be sucked up into the atmosphere and become clouds. So you think you're watering your plants, and you are, but the water passes through the plants and goes up into the atmosphere to become clouds. Right? You kind of irrigate the landscape, and the landscape turns around and irrigates the sky. So there's where your irrigation water goes. Right up there in the clouds. And it would be really nice and really handy if we could reach out and grab one of those clouds, pull it over on top of our garden and squeeze it, let the water come out, kind of thing. The most important thing is for you to remember is that really it's not your plants that are driving water use, it's the atmosphere. Plants are like a wick, just a conduit. So the atmosphere is everything. Evapotranspiration rates. Think of the atmosphere like a sponge that settles down and you dab it on your landscape. If the sponge is dry, it's going to suck up all the water from the landscape. If the sponge is wet, then it won't soak up so much. And if the sponge is saturated and we squeeze it, it may turn around and rain or snow. It's all the atmosphere kind of thing. So, plant water use, we combine evaporation losses from the wet soil and the leaf surface for transpiration, and the combined water use from any vegetated landscape is called the evapotranspiration rate, or the ET rate. ET is measured just like you would measure your swimming pool in inches per day. So how much did your plants or your swimming pool lose today? Today it's pretty hot. I'm not sure whether we broke a record or not, but it could be 0.36 inches. I doubt it. It's been about 0.3 lately. So this much water leaves your landscape and goes up into the atmosphere. It's pulled out from the soil. It's pulled up by your plants, goes through your plants, but its ultimate destination, the driving force here, is how dry is the atmosphere and how much water does it want from my plants. We measure ET in inches per day, or inches per week, inches per month, or inches per year. ET changes all the time. This is a graph. It's months going across the bottom. So this one is January, February, March, April, May, on down. And then this is ETO, not in inches, but in the metric system, so it's in millimeters. But you can see, and it's got the average, the minimum, and the maximum. But you can see it's lowest around December and January. And then as it gets warmer and the days get longer, then the ET rate changes. Until finally, around July 1st, we have what we call peak ET. That's the peak water use. And you know all this intuitively, in a sense, because you know you got to water your plants more often in the summer when it's really hot than you do in the winter when it's really cool. So ET is always changing. And what that translates into is, in order to irrigate efficiently and replace the water lost by ET, then you got to be changing your clock a lot. So ET, the body of gas, the atmosphere that surrounds the Earth, has a chemical attraction for a certain percentage of water. It's like a sponge, right? If the attraction, amount of water in the atmosphere, already in there, like a humid day, right? And the amount of water in the atmosphere is higher than the chemical attraction, and we have excess water and it rains or snows. If, on the other hand, the amount of water in the atmosphere is dry, a real dry day, then it's going to suck water up from our landscape, kind of thing. So weather is really the driver here. Weather is a description of the current state of the atmosphere, and that's what determines your ET rate, and that's what determines how much water you need on any given day, on any irrigation. Keep your eye on the weather. Speaking of the weather, there are 4 variables that we want to keep an eye on that determine how dry the atmosphere is and how much water it wants from your plants on any given day. And so sunlight or solar radiation, temperature, humidity, and the wind. So the first question I'm going to throw at you is that, are these things constant throughout the valley? No. Like, we don't have windmills. Where are the windmills? Okay, so there's much windier out in the center of the valley than it is up in the coves. So, 4 variables, and I don't know where all of you live, but Cathedral City is different than Palm Desert. Right? And Rancho Mirage is different than Desert Hot Springs, and so on. So there's this variable, and you can start to see how hard it is to irrigate, to keep track of all this stuff. So solar radiation. Sunshine bombards plants and the soil with photons. If you drove over to our next building, there's a sign there. And that sign is almost completely faded. And why it's faded is it's west facing and it's bombarded by sunlight. And it has photons, which is a physical thing, and it wipes out the paint. The paint is faded. If we turn that sign around, it was facing the other way, east, the paint would still look fresh. So we got these photons in sunlight, and they bombard everything, including the soil and including your plants. And when they do, the more sunshine, the more water use there is. 2 factors, intensity and duration. So intensity is, in the summer, the sun's almost directly overhead, and you have the most intensity. In the winter, the sun is slanted down that way, and it hits your plants and your soil at an angle. In the summer, it hits it almost directly overhead. So sunlight is not as intense in the winter as it is in the summer. And then we have duration. Shortest day of the year, we've got about 9 hours of sunlight. Right? That's around December 21st. And then on June 21st, the summer solstice, we almost have 16 hours of sunlight. That's one of the reasons your plants use more water. They're getting a lot more sunshine. And then those of you who live in the cove, then we have this phenomenon called sun shadow, or the mountain shadow. So the people up towards Bighorn, up Highway 74, as you leave 111 and start to go up, there's mountains on either side. So when the sun comes up, it might be 9 o'clock or something before it gets above the mountain range on the east and begins to hit your plants. So up in that area, they get even less. They don't even get a full day. And the same thing when the sun sets. If you're out in the center of the valley, in between the pass, then you've got longer daylight than if it is, again, up here, and you've got the mountains on the side. So day length and sun shadows. So if we have a bright, sunny, long summer day, then the atmosphere is assisted in getting water from your plants, and that's a high ET day. So does everywhere across the valley get the same amount of sunshine? No, they don't. So the next thing is temperature. Hot plants and hot soil surfaces cause the water molecules to vibrate more rapidly. It's called Brownian movement. So you learn in basic chemistry. But they're warm, and so they vibrate more, and they're more easily evaporated. And they evaporate, and they're gone, and replaced by more. So the temperature of any landscape, like in your individual houses, your individual landscapes, varies with what elevation. So are you in the lower part, or are you up Highway 74 ways? The slope or direction. In the Bighorn area, Ironwood, up in that's a north-facing slope. So the sun doesn't hit it directly. But over in Desert Hot Springs, it's a south-facing slope. So it gets hotter because the sun hits it more directly. There's an area in grapes. Table grapes is a big crop here. And the way the table grape people make money is the earliest grapes have the biggest market price. So everybody's in a hurry to try to get those grapes ripe, because maybe it'll get $36 a box, $42 a box. The longer they wait, then San Joaquin Valley starts producing their grapes, and the price goes down, down, down. Break even is $12, right? You get to 8, and you might as well just let them go to raisins, kinds of things. So where do the vineyard people like to plant their grapes? On a south-facing slope. So above Mecca, it was called the Banana Belt, because that was prime land, because it warmed up the fastest, because it was facing south. Slope direction, mountain shade, and then what kind of service you have. All these things. So temperature changes all over the place. And then humidity. Humidity is a measure of how much water is already in the atmosphere. Right? So how much water is in the sponge, so to speak. And so when there's a lot of water, there's a lot of humidity in the air, like it gets around August and so on, then the sponge can't pull any water. So what we find, at least I personally do, humidity and heat, just awful. It's awful in August. But for your plants, it's good for their water use, because the atmosphere won't want very much water from them, because the atmosphere is already saturated. Your sponge is already full of water. And finally, the wind. Air movement increases contact between the atmosphere and your plants. So when you've got a hot, dry wind, like I shop at Costco out near, Monterey and I-10, and you know, the wind just howls there. It just blows. And it's coming across dry sand dunes. It's not coming across an irrigated area like a golf course or something. And so that's brutal. And because that wind is moving fast, it goes across the leaves, grabs the surface moisture of the leaves, but doesn't stay there saturated to repel it. It's 100 feet away, and there's new dry air coming. So wind can actually double ET rates. If we get a real hot, dry wind, really increases plant water use. So wind depends on the season, the location, where you have a windbreak, or whether you're out there by Lowe's or Home Depot or Costco out there. Just brutal out there. They use a lot more water than we do here. Okay, so in review, the wind increases ET, evapotranspiration. Solar radiation increases ET. Temperature increases ET, but humidity decreases ET. So at any time, those 4 variables vary, and in combination, they determine how much water your plants are using and how fast they're going to use up your last irrigation. A low ET day. Sure, it will be a short day. It'll be about 8 hours in duration. It will be overcast and cloudy, no sunlight. Temperature will be cool. We'll have high humidity, and the air will be calm. This usually happens in December and January. And the ET rate will be maybe 0.05 of an inch a day. Right? Really low water use then. A high ET day would be a long day, 16 hours of sunlight. Bright and clear, high temperatures, low humidity and high winds, usually in June and July. And then your plant water use will be 0.4 of an inch. So you're going from a low of 0.05 to 0.4. So big difference in how much water your plants use depending on the time of year. ET rates can change literally from minute to minute, hour to hour, day to day, week to week. ET is always changing kind of thing. And so, you know, you can be there in a cloud, can go over and block the sun. I did a lot of work in my younger years outside here in the summer, measuring irrigation systems. And when it was really hot and there'd be a cloud, the sun went behind the cloud, wow, you know, it's like it dropped 10 degrees. And then the cloud moved on and it's hot again, thing. So, because ET rates are changing all the time, they got to be monitored continuously. And weather stations monitor the ET variables continuously and calculate the daily ET rate, which is called ETO. ETO is the ET rate measured by a weather station. So ET just describes evapotranspiration. ETO is evapotranspiration as measured by a weather station. And in about 15 minutes, we'll see the significance of that. So ETO is a numerical description of the daily ET rate as measured by a weather station. For instance, it was probably 0.029 inches today. Weather stations, not just any weather stations. There's two types of ETO weather stations, public and private. And they often use the same instrumentation. They're there to predict plant water use. They use often public and private. And this is a weather station. And this is the public one. This is the CIMIS weather station. And we're going to see all the components and stuff. But this is here. Now there's private weather stations too that you can buy. Many of our golf courses and a number of our farmers have their own weather stations on site to calculate ETO for them. And why it's particularly important from them is people like golf course superintendents and people in large farms put down thousands and thousands of gallons per irrigation. And so it's costly. And so we call it chasing ET. If the ET drops, they want to reduce the runtime on their sprinklers or their drip irrigation or something because they don't want to irrigate any more than is necessary. They want to match ET, basically, is what they're doing. The advantage of the CIMIS stations, which is our public stations, is they're regularly calibrated. They have the same instrumentation. They're regularly calibrated and repaired. They're standardized. You're going to see in a minute where they are all over California. This is a California Department of Water Resources program, and you're going to see where all the stations are throughout California. They're all the same, and they're maintained every month. Somebody goes out there and makes sure that they're reading right and nothing's broken and that kind of thing. Oh, the other thing about public stations is they have siting criteria. You can't just stick this thing in a parking lot or somewhere. Usually what you want is to put it on grass, a lot of grass. So the CIMIS stations we have here in the valley have been on sod farms or on golf courses. Right? Private, they don't get maintained, they don't get repaired, and often their siting is bad. Like, it's behind trees. So it's not really reading the wind because it's behind a windbreak. Like a wide open. CIMIS stands for California Irrigation Management Information System. It's a statewide network of weather stations operated by the California Department of Water Resources. It's 100+ stations. So they're all over the state. I'm going to show you a map in just a minute. They all got the same instrumentation, and they're all monitoring, solar, temperature, humidity, wind speed, and rain gauge. They're monitoring that all over the state, and they have inside a data logger. So that's what's in here. And although this one doesn't have it, it has an antenna on it, so they can call it up. So at midnight, every night, computer in Sacramento at the California Department of Water Resources calls every one of these stations and says, what happened today? Download the data. And so they get the data, and then there's a quite involved calculation that they do, and they come up with the ETO. And then you get up in the morning and it's available to you. But it's a day old. Why is it a day old? Because you got to wait until the day is done before you can do the calculation. I can't do the calculation at 3 o'clock in the afternoon because ET is still happening. Yes. So it's always a day behind. There's a station. That one's out at a sod farm. And you see the solar panel. We have the data logger and the modem, so they can call it up and ask it what happened today and download that stuff. We have a temperature and humidity sensor in here. And wind speed, right over there with the little cups, kind of thing. So, and they're all standard, they're all the same instrumentation, same siting criteria, same calibration data, all the same kind of thing. There they are, and there's even more than that because that's the 2000 graph. But you can see weather stations are anywhere there's major irrigation going on in the state of California. There's one or more CIMIS stations there, where the state, with our drought and so on, trying to keep a handle, trying to provide this information to irrigators so they irrigate efficiently and use less water. So this is a free program, and they're all over the place. And in the Coachella Valley, right now, currently, we have 4 stations. We have one in Indio at Shadow Hills, in La Quinta at the Citrus Club, Oasis at the University of California Experimental Farm, and Thermal right near the Thermal Airport. So these weather stations are there. And they're all over the state. And based on years of data, because you can access this and go back to the very first day the station was operational, and you can get the data. So based on years of data, the Department of Water Resources constructed a statewide ETO map. And the Coachella Valley, along with Imperial Valley, Palo Verde Valley, and Death Valley, all make up, they're all in Zone 18. And Zone 18 is the highest ETO area in the state. So here, we use more water than anywhere else in the state. And I wish someone would tell Governor Jerry Brown that when he tries to hold us to the same water use standards as Santa Monica, which is different. I won't go into that. But if you look at the map there, which you can see online, you see the different colors. Zone 1 is along the coast. And then as you move further and further in, it's warmer and it's higher ETs. Until finally, Death Valley, Palo Verde Valley, which is Blythe area, Imperial Valley, and Coachella Valley make up Zone 18. And we have the highest use in the state. We have higher water use than Death Valley. In fact, in, I don't remember the exact date, 2002, the very highest ET that was ever recorded by the CIMIS network was the Indio station in 2002, had 0.5 inches. So a whole ½ inch of water. So we use a lot of water here. So we want to keep track of this. All right, so here's Zone 18, and here's the average figures on it. January, February, March, April, May. And you can see, of course, that when's the highest ET? June and July, 9.6, 9.61 inches. That's how much water your landscape wants during those months. And then you see down in January, it's 2.5 inches, much less kind of thing. And the total, the average total for Zone 18 is 71.6 inches of water per year the atmosphere wants from your landscapes. All right? So, let's take April, because it's April, and I boldface it, so 6.9 inches. Do you think that all the landscapes in the Coachella Valley had an ETO of 6.9 inches? You know that up in Bighorn, you know where the windmills are. I mean, just look at the winds, look at the north-facing slope, south-facing slope, sheltered from the wind. The ETO changes all over the place. And my predecessor, before I came here 16 years ago, noticed that some areas seem to use more water than others. What we did is we made our own map. And I'm going to tell you how to have access to it, because you need to know. For the past 9 years, in conjunction with the University of California, Cooperative Extension, and UC Davis, we took a portable weather station that we calibrated next to one of our CIMIS stations and moved it around and compared the two. So for a year, to see if everything was 71.6, like the state said. So CVWD WRP-10 is the water treatment plant right down there. West Coast Turf Sod Farm in Indian Wells, opposite the tennis gardens. We had one there for a year, and all these golf courses, El Dorado, Vintage, PGA West, Bighorn, Shadow Ridge, Shadow Mountain, Springs, Desert Dunes, Sun City, Palm Desert, Mission Lake, Sun City, Shadow Hills. We put portable weather stations in all these places and compared it to our mother station, which was in Indio. And instead of the average being 71.6, in some areas, up towards Bighorn, you only need 58 inches in a year's time. Out in the wind belt, actually Shadow Ridge, which is right across the street from Lowe's on Monterey, where the wind really blows there, 83 inches. So if you live in, say, Mission Hills, you're going to use a lot more water than if you live up in Bighorn or Ironwood, where it's protected. And we make allowances for that in our billing system based on the map that you're about to see. So let me tell you how we did this first. There's the weather stations. That's at Sun City, Shadow Hills, north of Indio. And the second one, which has an antenna on it, is the real CIMIS station, number 200. The one right next to it is our portable. And the first thing we do is we put them side by side and leave them there for a couple of weeks and make sure they're both reading the same ETO, right? And then we take the one in the forefront and we put it somewhere and we do a comparison. So one of the places that I stuck it was at Shadow Ridge. And you can see the wind's always blowing, all the trees are bent over and so on. And that is arguably the highest ET place in the Coachella Valley. Right up there, because of the wind, largely. Right? And then we went up as high as we could go. That's hole number 16 at Bighorn Country Club Canyons, I think. They had two golf courses there. We went up there to the highest place and stuck it. And it's got the lowest ET up there, 58 inches. So they need much less water up at Bighorn or in the cove than you need to do out in the middle of the desert. And that's an opportunity for big savings. And so that's Shadow Mountain right here in Palm Desert, down towards the flatland. And what we're doing is getting all this data, and we made an ETO map, our own map kind of thing. And there's zones 1 and 2, we started out with 5 zones, but 1 and 2 are so close, we eliminated 1. So we got zones 2, 3, 4, and 5. 2 is at the edge of the valley, generally along the cove communities here. And then 5 is out in the middle of the desert. So there's our ETO map. I'm going to show you how you can get your own copy of it. The orange are the coves. So you can see right above the legend is Indian Wells, Palm Desert, Rancho Mirage, Palm Springs, La Quinta, and you can see they're all orange. So they're in the cove, they're somewhat protected, and they have the lowest ET. The first thing you need to know is, what zone is my landscape in? Am I in the kind of zone 5, or am I in the orange? Now, I'm going to show you a slide, and I'm going to give you a handout where you can go to your computer and bring up this map, and then click on the map and blow it up. So if you're near one of these border lines, you can see what street it is and where you are, so you can find out what zone you are in. So how do I get my zone? I want to know what my zone is. Okay? So cvwd.org is our homepage. And then along the bar at the top, you see in a minute, you click on conservation. Menu will fall down, and you click on ET information, and you'll get the past week's ETO data and the map and ETO data by zone, by day. Here's our home page, and you see up at the top, conservation going across the top. So you just put your cursor over that, and that will drop down, and you'll see weather and ET information. And you just click that, and that's what you're going to get. Right? And so you can see the ETOs for the zones, and then you see the map. And you click on the map, and you get a full page of the map, and then you put the cursor and keep clicking, and it blows it up bigger and bigger and bigger. So you can pinpoint, you can find your street, and you can find your house on it, and you'll know what zone you're in. All right, so all this makes sense so far? So that's what you see, and you can see the ETOs change in the zones. So on Sunday, April 8th, Zone 2 had a 0.22, Zone 3 had a 0.25, Zone 4 0.29, and 0.32 in Zone 5. So there's differences, and that's where we can save water. It's not all 71.6 inches throughout the whole valley. Where do you live? And that's opportunities. Also, on the home page itself, in the lower left, is the actual day's ET, outlined there in red. So you don't have to go all the way in. If you're just interested in yesterday's ET, that will give you what it is by zone. There's the information. Watering index is suggested watering time, and the ET for each zone. Right? So all you got to do is cvwd.org and go to that. And if you want to get into the history and more data and take a look at the map and blow up the map, you go to the website. And I'll give you a handout so you can do that. You remember the formula that I showed you at the very start. And it said ETL equals ETO times PF. Well, you know all about ETO now, okay? But what about ETL? What about our landscape? Because here's the thing, this weather station here is a great tool. It's got all its sensors and so on. You can buy one of these for about $7,000, plug it in your own backyard if you'd like, but you don't see any green, don't see any leaves. There's no stomata, which is the plants like sweat pores, and it doesn't transpire. thing, you know. It just measures the atmosphere. Doesn't measure plant water use. It says atmosphere is this dry, and so this is how much water that the atmosphere wants from your landscape. A weather station is not a plant. It's made of metal and plastic, not transpiring leaves. So plants resist the atmosphere. Another way of saying that's, what is a water resistance? Another way you could almost say it's kind of like drought tolerance. The atmosphere wants water from the plant. Does the plant just give it up or does it fight it? Things like cactus and arid land desert plants fight it. They've followed, their whole evolution is fighting the atmosphere. Other plants, especially if they involved in wetter, humid climates, they don't have the resistance built into them. Grass is one of those, particularly ryegrass. Plant factor is how much do the plants resist the atmosphere's pull for water. And the lower the number, the more resistance. So it's a decimal fraction that's used to convert weather station ETO to ETL, which is the ET of the landscape. That's what we want to know, is the landscape. So what we're doing is we're converting weather station data to plant data. Cool season grass is 0.8. And warm season grass, like Bermuda grass, resists water use more and needs less water, 20% less, really. On your left are low plant factor plants. So a typical desert landscape with desert type plants. And on the right is a high ET landscape, or a high plant factor landscape, rather. And you can see they got high water using plants on the right, kind of a conventional landscape, and low water using that. The best way to save water is convert. Use CVWD's program where we give you $2 a square foot and tear out or reduce your lawn and put in more low water using plants. And so your water use will go down. When I first came here 16 years ago, we didn't have this big push to make your landscape plants similar to what the desert environment is. And it was kind of rare to see a desert landscape. Everything was lawns. But I'd be driving along in my truck and I would see a desert landscape. It really stood out. Like green, 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 all of a sudden desert, green, green, green. So I would take the address of the desert landscape and its neighbor to the left and its neighbor to the right. And I would pull the water records and see what their use was. It's about a 70% reduction if you go to desert plant. It is consistently a good way to go. But some people don't like desert plants. And so it's a quick way to do it. And even though we give you a nice rebate, it's expensive. The landscapers, in my opinion, have taken advantage of that rebate and raised their prices, which is capitalism in action. Turf grass, you can see the ryegrass much more lush than the Bermuda grass on the right. Here's the formula in action. So ETL, the ET of the landscape, is equal to the ETO of whatever zone you're using, times the plant factor from whatever plants you're irrigating. So for example, your landscape's in zone 3. You live in zone 3, all right? You're growing ryegrass. It has a plant factor of 0.8. Right? CVWD ETO table said yesterday's ETO for zone 3 was 0.2 inches. So 0.2 inches what the atmosphere wanted. However, the ryegrass is not going to give it all up. So we take the 0.2 and multiply it by 0.8, and your actual ETL, the ET of the landscape, is 0.16 inches. Okay? Now, are you ready to do all this? Are you ready to look up your ETO zone? Okay, that's easy. And then every morning, get up and go to your computer and download what the ETO was, multiply it by your plant's plant factor, and you have different plant factors for different plants in your lawn. All right? Run out to your irrigation controller and change the settings every day. Right? That's called chasing ET kinds of things, all right? Every day. Who does this? Nobody does this. I don't do that kind of thing. To go out every single day, can't wait to get the newspaper or get on my computer and find out what the ET is. And, oh, it dropped by 3/100 of an inch. Run out to my controller, my 8-station controller, and have to do it. So who does this? People who put down thousands of gallons per irrigation do this religiously. Golf course superintendents can, in the summer, put down 1 million gallons a night. And when they do that, they don't have, their water bill is a big, big part of running a golf course. So they don't want to put, they want to know what that ET is. They generally, most of them have their own weather station, and the weather station talks to their irrigation computer and tells it the ET changed, and it all changes automatically. You don't have to go look it up. Farmers who irrigate 40 acres and so on, as opposed to your little half acre, use a lot more water when they irrigate. So again, it's a big part of production cost. So they chase ET kind of thing, all right? So people use it. But you're not a farmer. Well, some of you may be farmers, I'm not sure, or golf course superintendents kind of thing, and you don't have a computer. So there's got to be an easier way for the residential customer to utilize this technology without being married to it, where you're just constantly doing that every single day. And there is. We have, CVWD offers residential customers free, that's the first thing, smart weather-based controllers that will automatically adjust your irrigation system based on the weather, just like this, okay? CVWD will also install it for you. They will come out to your house and remove your old clock and put your new clock in, and then they'll program it for you and explain to you how it works. In the entire state of California, there's not a single water district that does this. CVWD, our board of directors, feels that if we're going to give you tiered rates and penalties for excessive water use, we need to also give you the tools to be able to make your budget. Because your budget's based on ET, among other things. And so they do this. And so this is the deal of the year. There it is. So you've got the controller, and you've got this thing right above me here called SolarSync. And that's your sensor. It doesn't do humidity and wind, but it does temperature, sunlight, and rain. And these are the big drivers of ET. And so, this is what it looks like. This goes up on the eaves of your house. This is a little mini weather station. And this talks to it. So it tells you, you know, how much sunlight and how hot it was. And it'll shut it off if it rains, kind of thing. And it's your door prize, right? So you're looking at sum total, if you go out and buy that, you're looking at $250, $300. And we'll give it to you for free. we'll install it for you, and we'll program it for you. And once this is in there and programmed, you're done. It self-adjusts according to the weather, kind of thing. And then our guys, now here's the one drawback. The one drawback, if you have a gardener, tell the gardener not to mess with the clock. Right? That's our biggest thing, is that the gardener feels that the clock is his province. And they're mess with the settings. Don't mess with the settings, kind of thing. Now, if suddenly a really windy day comes up like today, where we have unusual temperatures and that, then you can come in there and have a thing called ET adjust or percent adjust. And so it's set for what the sensors read, but you think, this is a day old and it's really hot out. So I'm going to increase it to 110% of normal and give it extra water. Right? If the rain comes and the ET drops drastically, and this is real-time ET, this isn't a day old, this thing is in your yard right now doing it. So if you're really into this, I encourage you to go read it and get your stuff and adjust your controller itself. But most of us have a lot of things to do in our life. And being locked into chasing ET and changing that controller all the time for save $1 or $2 per day. If the water district's offering this for free, and they install, I got 3 guys. All they do is install clocks. So they're very good and very fast at it. So you don't have to worry about what wires go where or anything. And then better than that, or as good as that, is they'll program it for you. They'll see station 1 is turf grass. Okay, this is what I'm going to set it for. And it's got spray head sprinklers, and these shrubs over here, the rose garden's on drip. So they have to, but they'll do the initial programming. And then if something goes wrong with it, then you can call them on the phone. And they can all do this. They tell you, get your cell phone and stand, go to your computer, tell me what you see. And at their desk, they've got that. So they'll be able to tell you, move this switch here, that switch there, tell me what you see. And then they'll help you do it without them having to physically go out there and readjust your clock because you're a gardener or someone. The thing to do is don't mess with the clock. If you see your plants are wilting and something too much, then your installer will go over all this with you. Then you call them up and say, Jim, or Robin, the clock, my leaves are wilting a little bit. And he'll go in and say, okay, it sounds like that you need a little more water than we're giving it to you, so we'll increase the runtime. And the clock will tell it when to irrigate and when not to, kinds of things. So, thank you for being an attentive audience. And